on this particular issue and plan to have more information tomorrow night as we can continue to consult with various parties. So we are not planning to discuss school choice this evening, but should have an update tomorrow night to further acknowledge. And then so now we'll move into approval of tonight's agenda. So move. Support. Moved by Mr. Myers, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
I would propose that we move the call to the public to the end of the meeting in order to give our superintendent candidates the opportunity to be interviewed in a more timely fashion and deal with the call to the public at the end.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Mr. Myers to move call to the public to the end of the meeting or following the superintendent candidate interviews, and supported by Mr. Trombley. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. And we will now begin our interview process. Welcome, Ms. Barrett. Thank you for being here tonight. We're glad to have you. And I'm going to go through a little bit of an introduction here, just in terms of how the process is going to work. And then we'll jump into the questions. So roughly about 5 minutes we've got set aside for the intro. About 75 minutes will be for questions from the fellow board members. And then 7 minutes roughly for candidate questions for you, Ms. Barrett, to ask of the board. And then we'll work towards closing it up. Well, on behalf of the Brighton Area School Board of Education, I want to welcome Sarah Barrett to this interview for the position of superintendent. Ms. Barrett is currently the superintendent of Marlette Community Schools in Marlette, Michigan. Again, to start, I kind of ran through our format. The interview itself will take about 90 minutes. There's 22 questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, again, we will give you an opportunity to ask some questions of the board and then make any closing statements that you wish. And as we get closer to time, Mr. Silveri, who's our consultant, will hold up some cards identifying a 20-minute mark and a 15-minute mark just for guidance and assistance. So as the board hears from each candidate and weighs this critical decision, we'll be doing so through the lens of a candidate profile that was developed with considerable input from our stakeholders. Our intent is to identify the candidate that best fits this profile, which board members have at hand. Audience feedback may be submitted by clicking on the superintendent search link on the home page of our district webpage, or website, excuse me, and following directions provided there. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Ed as the elected representatives of our community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process and look forward to hearing from the input provided. While we are not seeking recommendations as to which individuals should be hired, we would appreciate the community sharing what you see as being the strengths of our candidate pool and any reservations you may have and that any unanswered questions that may remain. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump in, and I'll start off with the first 3 questions. Ms. Barrett, while we've had the opportunity to review your application, those watching from home have not. So if you could please briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
I would be happy to do that. Thank you for the invitation to join you tonight. I was pleasantly surprised on my drive down that I didn't hit a single traffic snack, so that was a bonus for me on my commute down. I started my career in education as a kindergarten teacher. My husband was in the military, and the only position I could find the first year that he was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, was at a private school. And so I taught kindergarten in a private school my very first year in Texas. And then I had the opportunity to teach in my major, which was German, and was hired by the local school district to teach high school German. It was a very diverse culture in a military community. It was a very large school district. I was one of 8 foreign language teachers at the high school, just to give you an idea of size of the district. My husband and I made the decision after I had been at Coppersville High School for 3 years that we wanted to raise our children closer to our families. And so we made the decision that we were going to leave Texas and move back home. And we did something a little unconventional perhaps, but it was whoever got the first job, that was the place we were gonna be. I'm from Ohio originally, he's from mid-Michigan, so it was whoever, and he happened to land the first position. And so in Michigan, we have been ever since. I was hired as curriculum consultant at Bay Aranac ISD due to my experiences in Texas, working with the Texas Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development on some, we were doing curriculum development via technology. We were doing some different things, 2 different summers we did that, I did that. And so I was there for 3 years, and at that point in time, really missed working with kids. I really felt my heart was still back in local school districts. And so at that point, I had gotten my administrative degree and was hired by Beaverton Rural Schools as our high school assistant principal. I was there for 2.5 years when the district offered me the elementary principalship when it opened up. And I went on to be the elementary principal for 3.5 years. After 3.5 years as elementary principal, one of the neighboring district superintendents gave me a call and said, you've done work, in curriculum, you've done work with special ed in your local district, you've done work in state and federal programs. We're creating a central office position called Director of Instructional Services, and I'd like you to apply. And because he invited me to, I did, and I was hired as the Director of Instructional Services at Meridian Public Schools. That superintendent retired at the end of that year. A new superintendent came on board in July, and as he was acclimating himself to the district, realized that the district was in arrears, and they had to create a deficit elimination plan. And part of that deficit elimination plan was to eliminate the position of Director of Instructional Services. And so I was assigned as elementary principal and Director of Instructional Services, because that's what happens sometimes in small districts. You wear a lot of different hats and learn a lot of different things. And I did that for the next 7 years, and after those 7 years were up, the position of Director of Instructional Services was reinstated. The district had made significant financial gains and had passed a number of bonds, and they were positioned, and so I went back into central office as Director of Instructional Services. So it was a lot of the same positions, but a lot more time to spend on them. And at that point in my career, I knew that I wanted to be a superintendent. That was always my end goal all along the way, was that I wanted to be a superintendent. I have spent the last 5 years at Marlette Community Schools in the thumb of Michigan. And to be quite honest, it's a delightful community. There are great kids, and it's a great place to be. But you're probably wondering, well, it's so great, and why around 3%, 3 to 5%. Since I've been there, we have built that up and we now have about 16% fund equity now. And we've done a lot of other projects that I'm sure I'll talk about throughout tonight's interview. But I truly, when I reviewed Brighton area schools superintendent description, I looked at it and thought, that's me. That is exactly what I believe in. I always put students first. That's what I am. That's who I am. That's what I do. I have an extremely good work ethic. I'm efficient, extremely efficient. I have to be in order to wear so many hats. And I'm a visible community member, and I'm really committed to doing what is absolutely best for students. And as you can imagine, in this time of this pandemic, that is really challenging. But that is truly at the heart of everything we do in our school district, and everything that I believe Brighton is trying to do. Brighton is doing the exact same thing right now. We want to do what's right for kids. We want to make sure that we're giving them the educational opportunities that they deserve while keeping them safe. When I reviewed your description, I really believe that Brighton area schools needs a superintendent who would lead, collaborate, and serve, and ensure that students are prepared for that learning for life that is the mission statement. And I truly believe I am a superintendent who could do that for you.
Great, thank you. My second question is, what is your vision of the future for Brighton area schools under your leadership?
Under my leadership, I truly believe that Brighton area schools will continue to be a leader in your region. In my opinion, you already are a leader within your county, you're a leader within in the state of Michigan. And I believe that that is a role under my leadership that Brighton area schools will continue to do. In addition, one of the strengths I have is building leaders, and that is something that I would want to continue to do during my time here at Brighton area schools. I believe that we need to continue to not only encourage our young adults to go into the classroom and be the teachers for tomorrow, but we also need to cultivate our leaders within and know that if and when people leave, that we have the appropriate staff who can step into their places.
Okay, thank you. Based on what you know or have learned of Brighton area schools, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term challenges our district will need to address? And how would your background and skills help us to address these challenges?
One of the greatest challenges that I believe all schools, districts are faced with right now, but Brighton area schools in particular, is the school shopping that occurs in our state when we have schools of choice. And to be quite honest, I believe in schools of choice because I believe students and parents should be in the district that best suits them. But I believe that will be an ongoing challenge in this region of the state, more so than in other areas of the state, because there are, you are located in closer proximity to other districts than what more rural area schools are. Parents don't have to drive quite as far if they want to school shop. And so I believe it's imperative that Brighton area schools continue to offer the high quality education that you already do, as well as continue to offer the extracurricular opportunities that attract students to your district and keep them in your district. The most immediate challenge for all of us in education, and quite honestly, I'm not sure it's going away, is this pandemic that we're all dealing with. I would like it to disappear anytime now off of our radars, and that there's either a cure or a vaccine or something that makes this a better, healthier situation for the world. But I'm not sure that we're on the cusp of any of those answers yet. And I believe it's an ongoing challenge, and it will be a challenge that teachers and administrators and staff will continue to need to be inspired and challenged to rise to the challenge of meeting kids' needs during this pandemic. And then, provided it actually happens and there is a cure or vaccine, it's going to be being the bridge as we move forward. Because we know students aren't going to come back with the skills that they left us with. The majority of students are not going to come back the way they left us. And so we are really going to have to work hard once the pandemic ends to continue to close the gaps that this pandemic has created for children. I'm very concerned about the gaps that have already occurred. You know, the only current research we have is based on Hurricane Katrina, and it's only in the area of math. So the long-term lasting implications of this COVID-19 pandemic, we simply don't know yet. And it's going to be important that we continue to monitor students, monitor what's happening in classrooms, and assisting parents in making sound choices for their children, and making sure that they're choosing the best place for their children to be, which of course is Brighton area schools.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mitchell?
Ms. Barrett, my name's Laura Mitchell. I'm going to be asking you some questions about district relations, okay?
Okay.
Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to the Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community.
One of the conversations I held with my secretary a couple of months ago at the very beginning of COVID was, how do we address this? How do we move forward? What can I do? What can I do to reassure people? What can I do to continue to make sure people feel that we are putting their best interests at heart for their children, for our staff? What can I do? And her response was, well, you need to keep doing what it is you always do. She said, you're positive. She said, and I'm not gonna say that I'm Susie Sunshine every single day, because that's not realistic. But I do try to find the positive in everything that happens. Every challenge that we're faced with, I try to look at it as an opportunity. This COVID-19 has presented way more opportunities than I was hoping for. I will admit that. But I am inherently positive. I know all of my staff members by name. And granted, it is a much smaller staff than what you have here at Brighton area schools. But that is something that I pride myself on. And even when I had a building of 500 students, I knew all of their names. I mean, that was something that was very important to me, and that was something I worked at. I have conversations with everyone in the district. It doesn't matter if they're the high school principal, or if they're a bus driver, or if they're a custodian. They know I have an open door. They're comfortable stopping me and asking me a question, having a conversation. And I just really believe that that is one of the strengths that I bring to Brighton area schools, or to any district. And I believe that is something that is important for staff, especially now, that they feel connected and that they feel that somebody really cares.
Thank you. What are some examples of community activities in which you have provided leadership, and in what ways did this benefit your district?
I've been involved in a variety of different events and different activities within the community, anywhere from Chamber of Commerce to meeting with the Clergy Association to serving on the United Way Board of the county. One of the most recent activities or projects that I undertook this last school year was in working with the Sanilac County Community Foundation, as well as all of the local district superintendents, to bring the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to our county. It was something that Sanilac County has never had, although all of our contiguous counties do. And in my opinion, it was time that we made that available to all of the students within the county. And so I approached my colleagues and I said, okay, this is an opportunity to raise the tide for all of us and rise everybody up by working collaboratively on this project in order to bring books into the hands of all of our children. And so that was my big project that I was involved with in the community last year, was getting the Dolly Parton Imagination Library off the ground.
How do you think various stakeholders, such as parents, community members, and staff members, should be involved in our planning process and in setting direction for the district?
I believe that it's important to have all stakeholders participate in the strategic planning process of the school district. That is a process that I went through with my current district 4 years ago. We're on the last year of our 5-year strategic plan right now. And in developing that plan, we made sure that all of our stakeholders in our community were represented. In a larger district, I would anticipate that I would be going out to local groups and not only asking them to send a representative to the strategic plan, but also having an opportunity to talk to them about the district, about what it is that we have to offer, and what my vision for the district moving forward. But ultimately, I found that I did a little bit of box checking, and quite honestly, I relied very heavily on the Board of Education. It was very important that we work collaboratively on the strategic planning process, and they helped me identify to make sure that I had every group in the community represented. And so that is what I would anticipate doing in the future, is working collaboratively with the board as well as with the administrative team to make sure that no one is left out of the process and that everyone is included.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alicia Reed. Got the next couple of questions for you. In what specific ways should our district be working with other local districts to meet the student achievement goals of both our students as well as theirs?
Well, I will tell you that I truly believe that when we can work collaboratively, and it's not always possible, but when we can work collaboratively with our neighboring school districts, we definitely are able to utilize economy of scale whenever we are working towards a goal. And so that is what I would hope could continue to happen in the future. In San Luis County, we collaborate on most of our professional development. We bring in a common speaker and we share the expense. And then we all do follow up in our local districts at different times. So I think very similar to what I mentioned about the strategic plan and working with the Dollar Park Imagination Library, we can compete. And I know that many school districts do compete for students. But ultimately, we are in this business because we want what's good for kids. We want what's good for all children, not just the children here in Brighton area schools. And so when possible, it's great when districts within a county can collaborate. To be quite honest, I'm not sure how much that currently happens in your county. So that would be something that I would need to explore further. But I don't hesitate currently to reach out to our ISD superintendent or to our local district superintendents to collaborate on different projects.
Thank you. What impact do you feel the Every Student Succeeds Act legislation is having on Michigan school districts?
The Every Student Succeeds Act, in my opinion, it is not having the impact that it's intended to have upon local districts. I think that the federal government has the absolute best of intentions, but is so far removed from what's happening in local districts that the impact has not been as significant. And the reason I say that is when I came to Michigan, I worked for Bay Area ISD, and back then, I gave myself just a little bit, really not as old as my gray hair looks, but it was goals 2000. And then that every child was going to achieve certain benchmarks by the year 2000. And then it was no child left behind. And now it's every student succeeds. And we have the absolute best of intention, but unless as a local district, we're putting our money where our mouth is and we're making sure that we're monitoring the data, that is the only way, that we're going to make sure that student achievement genuinely happens. And in my opinion, the Every Student Succeeds Act has simply not been able to do that from a top-down standpoint. I really believe it takes local district effort to continue to monitor student data in order to make sure that genuine change happens. And I say that because I know that at Marlette Community Schools right now, one of the biggest concerns was the third grade reading legislation that came out, as I'm sure it was here in Brighton as well. And as a district, that was a critical and important benchmark for our students to achieve, because we wanted to be seen as what we believed we were, which was teachers that were able to teach reading really well. But, and so what we had to do was curriculum realignment, which we did. We had to have a literacy coach in order to monitor and assist with fidelity of implementation, which we did. And then we needed to monitor student data, which we did on a quarterly basis. We monitored student data at central office. And obviously we don't have spring results from last year, but the year previously, we didn't have a single student who didn't meet benchmark. We had over 30% improvement we have the best MSET scores that we've ever had as a district. And it's because we were paying attention to what we wanted to accomplish, and we were monitoring it, we were measuring it, we were providing the appropriate supports to staff so that they had what they needed in order to be successful. And to me, that's how we generate true change in our nation and in our local school districts, is by making change at the local level. So I believe that Every Student Succeeds Act has the absolute best of intentions for all of our children, but I truly believe that the difference happens at a local district level.
Thank you. What impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
I think the standardized testing and the teacher evaluation system in Michigan has made a lot of people very uncomfortable. It truly has. It has made some administrators uncomfortable. It's made some teachers uncomfortable. It's even made parents uncomfortable because when we moved towards the current teacher evaluation process, it is different than what many districts had ever done previously. I remember early in my career that my very first teaching evaluation tool I used had satisfactory, adequate, it had 3 choices and the last one was unsatisfactory. And the bottom line was that until the right to work legislation was passed, most districts found it very, very difficult, once a teacher had tenure, to remove them from the classroom. And so what I do believe has happened is that it has made people nervous. But on the flip side, I also believe that it has improved student achievement. And as an individual, I'm okay with people making me uncomfortable. If I'm always in my comfort zone, I'm not changing. And so I'm okay with people being a little uncomfortable with the teacher evaluation tool and standardized testing, and that being part of the evaluation process. Because ultimately, I like to know what the bullseye is. And if bullseye has to do with standardized assessments, then I like to know what it is we need to do to get there. And so I tend to work back from that point. Here's our objective. How are we going to, what steps is it going to take for us to get there? And I believe, as I mentioned earlier, in truly providing staff with the appropriate supports and trainings in order for them to hit that target. My goal is never to set anyone up for failure. My goal is never to get rid of staff. My goal is to improve education for kids and to provide staff with the appropriate training and supports they need to get kids where we need them to be.
Thank you.
Ms. Barrett, my name is Ken Stahl. You spoke a little earlier about being a leader builder, I think, or maker, might have been choice of words, and I'm going to ask you some leadership attributes questions.
Sure.
Please describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you might vary from that style.
On a whole, I tend to be a very collaborative leader. I tend to work very collaboratively with my administrative team. And I tend to solicit input from experts in the field. My goal is always to hire people that I think are smarter than I am and more capable than I am. I believe that that's very important in the world of education. I know that my own strengths and my own capabilities, but I always believe generally that we are stronger and smarter when we work together. So generally, I tend to be what I would describe as a very collaborative leader. However, there are times when I differ from that mode of instruction, and I tend to be what I think of as an adaptive leader, in that I will modify my leadership style but best on the circumstances. And I'll give you an example. When COVID-19 hit, and we had to send kiddos home, we had to cancel school, we had to institute remote learning, and a big concern for a lot of us as local district superintendents was, what are the kids going to eat? Their parents are now, unemployed. We have 50% free and reduced lunch rates. How are our kids going to eat? And so very quickly it became a more of a directive style leadership. This is what we're going to do. We're going to deliver meals. We're going to deliver 7 days worth of meals, 2 different times during the week. We would serve different meals. And it became much more of a, this is where we're going and this is the direction we're headed in. There are times when I will say that I'm a vulnerable leader. And that's not generally the way things work, but quite honestly, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to be vulnerable and admit I am not going to try to snow you and tell you that I know something that I don't know, because that just makes us all look foolish. And so when I don't know something, I admit it and I seek out that answer. And then, so I will vary my leadership style based upon the situation, but ultimately, a collaborative leadership style is what I utilize the most.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the most difficult situation you've had to deal with in your educational career and how was it resolved?
I will tell you the most difficult situation that I've had to deal with in my educational career was the death of a student.
What?
The death of a student
Thank you.
was the most difficult situation I have ever had to deal with. I got a late night phone call from one of my board members who also happens to own the local record service, and he called to tell me that one of my students and his mother had been in an accident and they were both deceased. The student happened to be a 3rd grader. He happened to be in my son's classroom, and he happened to be my youngest son's reading buddy. And he happened to be the son of one of my brother-in-law's best friends. So it was a tough night. My school improvement team was out of the district. They were off, I had sent them out to training. And so what I would describe as the key people in my building were gone. My superintendent was on a pheasant hunt out west with his son. It was just how things happened that day. But after I got that phone call, we activated our crisis team. I did call my superintendent, who was out hunting his pheasants out west. And we made sure that we were ready to deal with the grief of staff, students, and parents the very next morning. because it was a school day, it happened on a school night, we had to be in school the very next day. And so, that is one of the worst things I've ever had to do.
Thank you. How do you lead in situations where you don't have authority over the people involved? Have you been in that position before in your career? And if so, how have you handled it?
That has happened. I can give a current example. The district currently, Marlette currently outsources we have outsourced food service, and we have hired the management company of Cardinals to provide our food service to all of our children, and all of the employees are contracted by Cardinals. And so I don't directly supervise food service at all, but I will tell you that I'm a very strong influencer. I may not be anyone's direct supervisor, but I definitely go out of my way to make sure that I'm an influencer, and that I make sure things are happening in the way that I want to see them happen. And I do that by talking with the employees, talking about what's available, making sure that, again, they have the tools that they need, and that they're remembering why we're all here, which is ultimately to make sure that we provide a quality education for our kids, and we make sure that our kiddos who need the school provided lunch and breakfast are getting it and are receiving it on a daily basis. I will tell you that is a weakness of mine, is that I like to be in charge. And even when I'm not in charge, I'm going to go out of my way to provide strong influence over something that I view as something that influences kids or affects kids.
Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Barrett. Angela Krebs. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about instruction and curriculum.
Okay.
So the first one will be, could you please give us examples of educational change or reform that you have initiated in your current or previous positions that have led to improvements in student learning?
Talked a little bit about Marlette and how we had made some changes in the area of reading. We realigned curriculum, we added the coaching support. Another initiative that I was involved with at Meridian Public Schools was bringing in project-based learning and one-to-one technology. That was a program that came in, I think, 4 years before I left the district. And it was, we, as a district, did a lot of exploring. Meridian at the time was really looking for their niche. I don't know what else to call it, they were looking for their niche in the county. Midland Public Schools was the large neighboring district that offered the International Baccalaureate program and other programs that as a small district we knew we couldn't replicate and we couldn't compete with, and had no intention of competing with. One of the other neighboring districts had a really strong industrial arts program and construction trades program, and so again, we decided that wasn't something we wanted to compete with. But what Meridian Public Schools did decide to do was to bring in project-based learning and one-to-one technology and become the experts in that. And so as a district, we worked with the New Tech Network out of California and provided training to all of the staff. And I will tell you, because I am inherently honest, that one of the things that Meridian didn't see that they wanted to see, which was an uptick in scores. The scores were not negatively impacted, but they weren't as dramatic. They didn't see the dramatic increase they had hoped to see. But what they did see was such a significant increase in student affective skills, in students' ability to talk to adults, of students' abilities to collaborate, of students' abilities to present. in front of their peers, which in my opinion, there's nothing harder as a high school student than to have to talk in front of a classroom full of your peers. And how to integrate technology within the curriculum and to really use technology as a tool and not just technology for the use of technology. So it was an initiative that overall was and continues to be a success, in my opinion, for Meridian Public Schools, and that ultimately they continue to produce students who most of us, if we were in a position to hire someone right out of high school, would not hesitate to hire, because the students have learned those soft skills so well, they are ready to enter the workforce.
Thank you. What do you believe are currently the biggest challenges with special education in our region? How should these challenges be addressed?
Well, I'm going to just throw out there that COVID has presented a whole new set of challenges for special education students. Ultimately, what I believe is the greatest challenge for all school districts in the state of Michigan, including Brighton area schools, is making sure that our students who have IEPs are employable after they leave high school. The statistics are absolutely horrible for students who've been on an IEP to ever hold down a regular full-time job consistently and to own their own home. It's less than 20% of students who are on an IEP that will own their own home. And I will tell you that I'm a mom, I mentioned that earlier, but I'm a mom of 4 children. And their age ranges are between 16 and 29. And my son, who's 18, who just graduated from high school, has autism. And my daughter, who's in her 20s, has a learning disability. And as an educator, and as someone who supervises or has supervised special education programs, that is, in my opinion, a crime that we are committing that we really need to remedy. We need to make sure that our special education students are on a path to be gainfully employed and to be successful in life. And I truly believe, other than the current COVID challenges, continues to be one of the greatest challenges for special education, is making sure that our students have the skill sets to be successful.
One more question.
Sure.
How do you think we can best meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high-quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. How can we best meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high-quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
I will tell you that I am a very strong believer in making sure that high school graduates are college and career ready. I will tell you that I do not believe that college is the path every child will take. And I believe that as local school districts, we need to make sure that our students have the opportunities of a college bound curriculum, but we also want to make sure that they have the skill set to understand that there are other paths in life other than a college education in which they can be gainfully employed and productive members of society. My husband, who I will tell you was very disappointed he didn't come tonight, he usually would have come, but because of the number limits and whatnot, he did not attend. He is a former industrial arts teacher and currently works in a construction trades management, whatever. I don't know exactly what he does, but he enjoys it, that's okay. But last year he was doing some work for a construction academy, and they can't find qualified individuals to hire. They are hurting in the trades across Michigan for qualified candidates. And I believe that it's important in districts Brighton's size to make sure that there are a variety of career paths available to children. and that there's flexibility within those career paths to change their minds. I don't feel that just because you decide you want to become a welder when you're in high school, you still need to have strong prerequisite skills, because later in life, you might decide that you want to become a supervisor, you might want to do something else. And that is something that would definitely, that was one of the items that really resonated with me when I did some investigation of your district, and that was your motto, your mission of learning for life. Because the jobs that our children are going to have are not going to be the paths that we or even our parents might have followed. I still remember going to the college placement office my freshman year at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and it was part of a 101 class of something, and they said, you're gonna change jobs. Actually, you're gonna change careers at least 7 times in your lifetime. I thought, really? I don't think so. And in reality, I have definitely changed positions, and however, I've stayed within one field, which is education. But I can't tell you how many of my colleagues, my college and high school classmates have done exactly that. They have changed careers, they have changed pathways, they have changed focus multiple times throughout their career. Some of them are doing jobs that didn't even exist back in, the 1990s when I graduated from college. The jobs didn't even exist. And so, in my opinion, that's why it's most important that we, regardless of the path the student is on, we make sure that they are able to be that lifelong learner, because chances are, at some point in their life, they are going to have to learn to do something else, something other than what they do. And it is our job to equip them to be able to change gears.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. My name is Roger Myers, and I'm going to be asking you some questions regarding operations and finance. My first question is, please describe your experience with budget development and financial management, and what is the greatest financial challenge you have faced, and how did you successfully resolve it?
As a superintendent, I have developed budgets in conjunction with my finance director, business manager for the last 5 years, starting from scratch. And, going through the budget amendment process, all the way through the audit process with her. So I have a good, strong foundation of what it takes to build a budget and what it takes to live within a budget. If my husband were here tonight, he might roll his eyes at me right now because, the whole living within a budget thing, might roll his eyes. But when it comes to school finance, I take it very seriously because I'm working with public dollars. These aren't my personal dollars, these are the public's dollars. These are your community dollars. And I think it's very important that your community gets the best bang for their buck. The second part of your question was,
What is the greatest financial challenge you have faced, and how did you successfully resolve it?
the greatest financial challenge that I faced so far is that at Marlette Community Schools, when I came in, we had about a 3% fund equity. So that was a huge concern for me and for the board at the time. About a year before I came to the district, they had a series of events that occurred that resulted in that fund balance being reduced to the amount that it was. It was an adopted budget. It was just that I think that it perhaps wasn't monitored as closely as maybe it could have been. I don't know. It wasn't under my watch, so I can't really speak to what happened. But what the district wasn't doing during that time period was right sizing. And they weren't looking for other possibilities for revenue. And so those were some of the things that I did have done while I've been at Marlette Community Schools, is to make sure that the district is right sized. I hate to use that term, but it's one of them that I've used and it applies in this case. That We need to make sure that our staffing matches enrollment. Sounds like a simple thing, but in a small community, just like it is in bigger communities, we all know that staffing means people. And that is not an easy decision to make, but for school boards, it is not an easy recommendation to make as a superintendent. But I would not be fiscally responsible if I didn't make recommendations that were in the district's financial best interest. One of the other challenges that I was presented with, in addition to building fund equity, was that I was directed by the Board of Ed that they wanted, within that budget, wanted me to put $100,000 into a capital projects account every year. And so I not only had the right size staff, but I had the right size staff to a point where I could manage to do that too. And working in close partnership with my business manager, finance director, she wore both titles, we have been able to do that over the last 4 years, because that charge date was the end of my first year. The district's sitting at over 15% fund equity. And over the last 3 years, with the capital projects account, the district has been able to put in new football bleachers and a new press box. And this last summer, they were able to put new bleachers in high school. So, budget challenges, I think, are an ongoing concern for school districts. And you have to monitor the budget closely. You have to have an understanding of what budget codes are as a superintendent, and you have to make sure that you're paying attention. That's the bottom line, is that on a monthly basis, you know, I get printouts from my business manager, and I look at the percentage of the account that we've expended thus far this year, and when something's out of whack, we have a conversation. Now, sometimes it's appropriate. At the beginning of the year, maybe it's appropriate that supply line items by the end of October, we've expended 80% of them, because we want to front load supplies for schools. But if our energy line item, if our electricity line item is showing that I've expended 70% in October, we have a budget problem, and we need to fix that. So I do believe that if one isn't monitoring the budget on a regular basis, that's when things happen.
Thank you. How have you gone about prioritizing the allocation of financial resources in the best interests of students, staff, and the district as a whole? What are your top 3 priorities when establishing the district budget?
When establishing the district budget, my priorities are always on student safety, student achievement, and making sure that we have a balanced budget. Even if it means that we're not adding to fund equity, as long as we're not taking from fund equity, that is one of the goals, is to make sure that we align the resources to what we believe in, and we make sure we spend the money accordingly. I'm not sure that really answers your question.
So my next question would be,
Yeah.
please share your experiences with non-traditional revenue-generating programs and shared services. How can these be maximized for the greatest benefit to our district?
Sure. While I've been at Marlette Community Schools, we did partner with one of our local non-publics in order to do shared time services. And we had that relationship in place for 2 years. Unfortunately, last year that school closed. But it was an opportunity for the district to capture some revenue from providing those services out to the local district. In addition, I've worked closely with a couple of the different community foundations, and they have also provided some much needed resources at different times, as well as local community groups. When we did the bleacher project I mentioned, we had a local community group who raised $50,000 towards the purchase of redoing the press box in addition to doing the bleachers. We had set enough money aside in the district, we knew we could do the bleachers, but we do At that point, we didn't have the money for the press box, and we were going to make do and utilize what we have there. And we have a local group that raised the funds so that they raised 3/4 of the funds to pay for the press box, and the district was able to do the rest. I think that it's important to work very closely with not just your community foundations, but also your community groups. Our community groups in Marlette have been extremely supportive of the school district, as well as our local foundations. We just hired a band director, and he came to me with a proposal 2 weeks ago, and he said, I would really like every student in 5th grade to have band. Every student to have band, every student to participate. Okay, that's a great idea. In order to not have to, send some of the kids here and some of the kids there. He wanted all of them to be in the band. Okay, what's it gonna take for that? He said, well, in order, along with what we already have, he said it's gonna take $10,000 worth of instruments, additional purchase of instruments in order to do that. And I said, oh, Mike, you have a fantastic idea. But quite honestly, Mike, I don't have that in the budget right now. But let me reach out to some local community groups and see what we can come up with. Within the week, we had one of the local foundations committed to the full $10,000, and so we didn't actually have to continue to reach out to fully fund his program to make sure that every student has band in 5th grade. So I believe that there are a variety of different ways that a district can augment their budget, not just through shared time services. That is definitely one route. I know that's been very successful for Brighton area schools because you have a number of non-publics that you're able to work with. But I also believe that it's important to maintain those strong community connections with your local foundations as well as your local service groups and your local churches, because sometimes we're surprised, pleasantly surprised, at where resources come from in small districts. And I'm sure the same is true in large school districts. I know it's true. It's just different numbers of groups and different variety of groups. I truly believe our communities want children to be successful, and they want children to have opportunities. And generally, they want to partner with the school district, but they have to be invited. And that's important.
Thank you. My last question is, what is the most effective way to finance capital improvements, both in the short term and long term?
There are so many ways to finance capital improvements. And I know your district recently passed a bond this past year in order to make improvements to your school district. That is one way. There are sinking fund villages. There are countywide enhancement villages that can be passed. There are, it really comes down to, in my opinion, a conversation with the school board and between the superintendent and the school board to decide what exactly you want to have done. What exactly do I think needs to be done? What are the administrative team recommendations? And as a school board, what are your priorities? What do you want to see happen? Because those aren't decisions, in my opinion, that I make in isolation. Those are decisions that I make in conjunction with the school board's input and the community input as well. I think we all have a wish list of things that we would like to have in schools. And when all of the stars align, we have them all. But everything needs updating on a regular basis. Right now, I think a lot of school districts are struggling with what, if they're not currently one-to-one with technology, making sure that students have adequate technology and as well as internet in order to engage in curriculum activities and their virtual learning. So while I was at Meridian Public Schools, I was, before I actually worked for Meridian Public Schools, my husband and I were part of a bond campaign in 2006 for the local school district to provide updates to all of the buildings. It was kind of to reface and do the high school a little bit, and then to add a couple of classrooms to the elementary school, and to refresh technology. And so back in 2006, we were on the, probably where the superintendent, Pat Snelly, was my husband and I were very active in that campaign to make sure that bond passed. Ultimately, though, when it comes down to capital projects, it truly depends on priorities and how the board wants to go about achieving those funds.
Thank you.
They saved the best for last.
Wonderful. Do you have any Oreos left, or did you eat those already?
No, I still got some. I haven't got into them yet. Getting close up. My name's Bill Trombley, and I'm going to ask you about staffing and personnel tonight.
Sure.
So could you please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team?
My most successful experience at building a high-performing team. I would say that these last couple of years at Marlette, I've had the opportunity to, with a combination of people looking for new opportunities, as well as some people who have retired, we have been able to create a much higher performing administrative team than what we've had in the past. People who are willing to take risks within moderation, and people who are willing to work together to achieve students, to increase student achievement, I guess is what I want to say. One of the things that I have done throughout my career, I mentioned earlier that I work really hard to find people and hire people who are better at some things than I am, for a couple of reasons. One, I like to learn. I view myself as a lifelong learner, and being in the small district, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about different aspects of schools. That sometimes in a larger district, you become a little bit more of a specialist. And I think in a smaller district, we definitely become more generalists. And so when I do my hiring, I always look for a couple of things. I look for people that I feel love kids, love students, love children, and want to be there. I look for people who are dedicated to improving student achievement and are willing to think and implement ideas that are a little bit outside of the box. Because the bottom line is, if we keep doing what we've always done, we're not going to get any different results. We're going to continue to get what we've always had. And thirdly, the third thing I look for when I do my hiring is I look for people who want to grow and who want to continue to help others grow.
So I asked you about the high-performing team, but
Yeah.
how did you measure that? What gauge did you use to measure that it was high-performing compared to the team before?
These last couple of years, I've measured my team through a couple of metrics. Because as a district and as a superintendent, I've had a couple of priorities. One of them was student achievement. And so that is one of the ways that I measured whether or not my team is actually high performing or improving in performance. And that was through local district assessments as well as statewide assessments. And so that data has showed that my team was improving in their ability to increase achievement for students. Another metric that I always, and I know my board measures me by, is whether or not I have a balanced budget. The district, like I mentioned, had some significant economic difficulties 7 years ago now. And it is a priority for the current board that we maintain a healthy fund balance. And so on an annual basis, that's one of the things I look for is have we been able to do that as a team, maintain that healthy fund balance, maintain the trajectory that we want. And we've been able to do that. The third thing that we have used most recently to measure our success as a team is we've been monitoring student attendance data. COVID-19 really kind of threw us off track with student attendance data, but that was the third metric by which we were measuring our team's success, is whether or not we were able to increase the number of students who missed fewer than 10% of the school year. It's in Marlette Community Schools, it's a pretty scary number of the percentage of students. Over 50% of the students were missing more than 10% of the school year. And so that was an area that our goal was to make sure we decrease that on an annual basis, and we've done so.
How would the president of the teachers union describe you?
I've asked him that question. As part of my preparation for the interview. I said, give me a couple words, how would you describe me? He says, I would describe you as honest, approachable, productive, and positive.
Would you expect him to say anything else?
Yes, I would actually, because we have that kind of relationship where I would expect him to potentially say something else.
And what would that be?
Let me see. Some of the other words he might use might be stubborn, a little hard-headed, and frugal.
Okay.
Those would be the other words he used.
All right, last question. What would you suggest in terms of comprehensive professional development plan for your educators? Specifically, what would be the key priority areas as well as the delivery system?
For this coming year, in my opinion, the areas where Bryan Community Schools at the secondary level, your teachers need professional development in the area of block scheduling. It's something new to your school district. It's something the majority of your teachers have not done in the past. And so in my opinion, they definitely need professional development in block scheduling, since that's what you plan for them to implement this fall. Another area that I believe that your staff need professional development is in the delivery of virtual instruction. Because all of us, including Brighton area schools, are going to, at some point during this year, whether parents signed up for it or not, they're going to be delivering virtual instruction. And in my opinion, we were assembling the plane as we flew it last spring. For most of us anyway, we really did not have the opportunity to give our teachers the tools that they needed. Let me tell you, teachers across the state of Michigan exceeded my expectations. They really did. They exceeded my expectations for what they did with kids this spring with little to no training across the board. And then, the third thing that I think teachers could use professional development is, and to me, it's just an ongoing need, is in the use of technology. Technology is constantly changing. The use of technology and the delivery of remote instruction is different than the technology we use in our classroom on a daily basis. And so that would be professional development that I would want to make sure was happening for teachers prior to the start of school. It's going to be tough. It is going to be a very difficult year for students and staff. People have already were forced out of their comfort zone last spring, and they're going to continue to be out of their comfort zone this coming school year. And all we can do as leaders, as a school board, and as an administrator in a school district, is to make sure that we put as many tools in their toolbox as we can. We continue to support them in their supporting of our kids.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Barrett, we've wrapped up our questions, 22 questions. At this point, we want to take a few minutes now to provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have for the board.
As a board, what do you want Brighton area schools to be recognized for improving and excelling in 5 years from now?
So I'll certainly start. I think as we, continue to look forward into the 5-year time frame, we've spoken a fair amount here at the board table about a lot of real positives, and how we want to continue to push the envelope academically. We've been very fortunate to be in a situation where we've been rated a top high school, a top school district in not only the state but nationally. But we want to keep moving that needle further, and ultimately be the best school district in the state of Michigan, and one of the top in the country. So, I don't think that's an unachievable goal by any stretch. And I think my fellow board members would agree with that, and that is definitely a target goal of ours, is to get us to that point. We'll certainly look to others if there's anything else to add.
This is Alicia Reed. I would add just that we have enjoyed the fruits of some very innovative thinking here, and we would like to continue to see that over the next 5 years, not just in the academic goals that we set, but in how we go about achieving them.
I think to add to Ms. Reed, the word visionary has been used at this table quite a few times, and we've had that, and we're looking for some more of that, the out of the box thinking that you see so much of around here.
In our bond, we're looking to expand our STEAM centers across the district for all the kids. So I think that's a huge focus for the district, as well as my personal opinion and my opinion as a board member. I'd like to focus more on, I think you touched a little bit on this, training kids, teaching kids how to look for actual careers instead of focusing on college education, because sometimes that's just not the right fit for every single person.
This is Angela Krebs, and I'd like to also add that to be known for our teachers, the innovation in what our teachers are doing, being open to creative thinking in the curriculum and in the instruction areas.
And this is Roger Myers, and I, just to add to all of what's been said, I mean, what's made all of that possible thus far has been the fact that we have had, we benefit from a very strong financial position that we currently find ourselves in. I mean, obviously, the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever, wherever we come out at the other side of the pandemic, nobody really knows what the actual financial impact of that will be. So for me, it will be the ability for us to manage the district getting through that, and at the other end, continue to build on our financial success that then gives us the resources and to enable us to build on the academic achievement, build on the resources that we provide our teachers and staff, build on our innovative opportunities and platforms that we've created already for the district. And I think that's going to be vitally important to continue to be a leader, on all of those fronts.
Thank you. I will tell you, I think you're on the right path. I think your trajectory, your target, you're definitely, I think it's definitely achievable for this to continue to be a leader, not just in the region, not just in the state, but also nationally. And your scores, your achievement have shown that it is well within your grasp the 5 years from now. That is the only question I have for the board tonight. But I do have a closing statement.
Yeah, so, great, that was my, that was actually, the next, item on the agenda there was we do have, a little bit of time left, so, if there's anything you'd like to add or in a closing statement, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. In closing, I will tell you that I believe you as a school board are faced with one of the most important decisions you're going to be making over the next few years, and that is in selecting the right leader for your school district. I interviewed here tonight, we had some discussion, you're going to interview 5 other candidates, and I'm going to tell you that I believe within your candidate pool, you have the right person for Brighton area schools. I truly believe that. I looked at your candidate pool, and I truly believe that the person you're looking for is within that pool. What I will tell you is that when I come to a school district, when I work with a school district, all of the students of the school district become my kids. And the reason I tell you that is because my son, who's now 29, was in kindergarten, and we were sitting at the dinner table one night, and he said to me, "Mom, when are you gonna bring your kids home?" I said, "My kids home?" I said, "You're right here, you're here, your sister's here, you're right here, my kids are here." He says, "No, Mom, your other kids, the other kids you talk about from school. When are you bringing them home?" "Well, honey, I'm really sorry, I can't bring them home as much as I'd like to." But I didn't realize until that point, when my very precocious 5-year-old son at the time pointed out to me that the students that I taught became my kids. The students in the school districts that I work in become my kids. They're all mine. And I want the absolute best for my kids, just like I want the absolute best for your kids. I will tell you as a superintendent, when I come in, I am all in. My current home is right across the street from the high school. I believe very strongly in being an active community member. I believe that it's extremely important for your superintendent to live in your district, to, integrate themselves into the community, across community groups, across as much as that can be done in our COVID Zoom world that we are experiencing right now. I want you to know that if I were to come to Brighton Community Schools, that I would work for a safe learning environment, increased student achievement, a positive culture, and for students to be prepared for learning for life, just like your motto is. I absolutely love your mission statement, your motto, I don't know what you want to call it, if I can't remember which one you referenced it. But learning for life is what children need to be able to do in this coming world, considering that many of them will have jobs and careers that don't currently exist in today's world. In closing, I want to wish you well in your selection of a superintendent, because it is the most important decision you're going to make this school year, is making sure that you choose the right leader. And you will know if you've selected the right person. And I believe I could be that person, but I know you're interviewing 5 more people who are just as capable of being that person. So I want to thank you for offering me the opportunity to meet with you tonight, to have discussion about things I've done and the things that I could bring to your school district. And ultimately, I want to wish you well in your selection of a superintendent, because it's a very important decision and you want to make the right one. So good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time coming here tonight. Certainly your interest in the superintendent position in Brighton area schools. As you mentioned, we do have 6 candidates, and we're planning to conduct the rest of the interviews this week, and then move towards second round interviews in early September. And we should be in a position by the end of this week to narrow that field down for the second round. So again, thank you very much for being here. Safe travels home, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, I just shake your hand. However, in COVID-19, they told us not to. So I'll appropriately social distance, and thank you all for allowing me to come and interview.
At least we're here in person.
This is true. Many school districts are choosing to hold their interviews via Zoom. And it is definitely nice to be here in person, and even though, we're wearing our face masks, I will share the board on my way out that my 16-year-old is the one who picked this face mask out for me today. He was really sweet when he wanted to just wish me well in my interview, and he said, "Mom, if you have to wear a face mask, at least they'll know that you're smiling under your face mask." So he was the one who chose it, and since I bought him some off Amazon, I was lucky that this is the one that he chose, because he has some other ones he could have used.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Let's take a quick, let's take a 5-minute recess, and we'll reconvene. Good evening, or Dr. Kinzer, excuse me, sorry. My name is Andy Birchfield. Welcome to Brighton Board of Education for the Brighton area schools. We're looking forward to the interview tonight with you. Dr. Kinzer is currently an Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for the Novi Community School District in Novi, Michigan. Just to give you a quick rundown of, the breakdown for this evening. We've got about 5 minutes set aside for the introduction process here. And then about 75 minutes for questions from the board. We have 22 questions in total. About 7 minutes roughly for any questions you might have to the board. And then about 3 minutes for closing comments. So that equals out to a total of 90 minutes for this evening. Towards the end of the interview, Mr. Silveri will be sitting in the back, and he does have a card for 20 minutes and then 15 minutes just to keep us on track. And again, we want to make sure we get through the 22 questions and also make sure you have time to ask any questions in a closing statement as well. Just some additional background, really more for probably the community than yourself. But as we hear, we weigh the decision process with the candidate profile that's been developed thus far from a number of our community stakeholders. Our intent is to obviously identify the candidate that best fits this profile, and which is what we have in our hands. We're certainly going to solicit community feedback, and for those that are on the line or that are going to watch afterwards and recording, that feedback may be submitted by clicking on the superintendent search link, which is on the home page of our district website, and following the directions that are provided there within. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education, as elected representatives of our community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process, and will certainly be providing a number of opportunities for them to weigh in throughout the search process. While we're not seeking recommendations as to which individual should be hired, we would appreciate our community sharing what they see as being strengths of the candidate pool, and any reservations you may have, or any unanswered questions that may remain. And so with that, I'm going to open up the first question, and we'll start the interview process. So Dr. Kinzer, we've had the opportunity to review your application and materials. Those watching from home have not. And so could you please briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career?
Thank you, Mr. Birchfield. First of all, I want to say thank you to the board for the opportunity.
I'm sorry, I apologize for cutting you off. We've gone through some crazy technology issues in the last week. So just FYI, the mic standing straight up, will right in front of you. We'll pick up everything just fine. And no, believe me, we've been it's been quite the learning curve in the last 7 days. So sorry to interrupt, but that was okay.
I'll begin now. Thank you. May I ask a question before we begin?
Sure.
So there's the camera. I'm going to be speaking to you.
Right. Okay. That's fine.
All right. So I'll begin again for the third time, take 3. So thank you for this opportunity to be here this evening. It is an honor and a privilege. I'll begin just by telling you about my career. I graduated from the University of Michigan Flint in 1993 with a degree in secondary education, a major in English and a minor in history. And I was hired to teach high school English in Lee City High School in eastern Lapeer County. Coached girls track, was there for 1 year, and was fortunate enough to apply for and receive a position as a high school English teacher at Okemos High School in the fall of 1994. I taught a number of different courses within the English department at Okemos High School. Was there for 5 years, also coached football and golf. And then moved on to the middle school assistant principal position at Kinowa Middle School within the Okemos Public Schools in 1999. Served as assistant principal and athletic director at Kinowa from 99 until 2006. Had many tremendous leadership opportunities within that role. I was very fortunate to work for a principal who allowed me to do much more than just the traditional roles of behavior management and climate. I was involved in instructional leadership, the special education process, and that was a tremendous growth opportunity for me as a young administrator. I decided to pursue an elementary principal position within the Okemos Public Schools in 2006, applied for and received the position as principal at Hiawatha Elementary School in Okemos, and served in that role for 11 years. So in my 23 years in Okemos, I did high school as a teacher, middle school as an assistant principal, and elementary school as a principal, no preschool. Certainly learned a lot about instruction. And as a young high school teacher, I did not recognize how much I could have learned early in my career by watching elementary school teachers work. Had many tremendous experiences as a principal that I will share examples of throughout the evening. Back in 2001, I guess I missed this piece. I earned my master's degree in K-12 educational administration at Michigan State University. And then, maybe 8 years, 9 years into my time as principal at Hiawatha, decided that I wanted to pursue a doctoral degree. So I was admitted into the K-12 educational leadership doctoral program at Michigan State University. So my final 2 years as an elementary principal, and then my first year in Novi, I worked through the doctoral program and received my degree in the spring of 2018. That experience in the doctoral program at Michigan State really helped solidify my intentions to pursue a central office position. The opportunity to work with the faculty and my cohort mates on a regular basis to engage in rigorous curriculum and instruction, conversation, networking, really made it clear to me that that's the work I wanted to do. And I think you'll see throughout the interview how important relationships are to me. And that was the driving force for me to pursue a human resources position. So in the late summer of 2017, I pursued a vacant position as assistant superintendent of human resources in the Novi Community School District, and was fortunate enough to receive that position. Have worked there for the past 3 years and grown tremendously as well in that role. So 27 years, most of them in leadership positions in high achieving districts that I think are similar in many ways to the regular schools. I'd like to just take a moment to share just a little bit about my family. My wife, Marcy, was a public school teacher and administrator, athletic director, assistant principal, principal in both the Mason Public Schools as well as the East Lansing Public Schools. Decided in 2011 that she wanted to shift her focus and is now the executive director of a local nonprofit fitness foundation in Okemos. Have 2 children. My daughter Maggie is about to begin her senior year at Okemos High School. And my son Ryan will begin in grade. His entire school experience has been in the Okemos Public Schools as well. However, he really needs an in-person experience, and that's not available to him in Okemos currently, so he will begin tomorrow at St. Thomas Aquinas School in East Lansing. So, why Brighton? I have not been actively seeking superintendent positions. I feel like 3 years into my time in Novi, I'm just hitting my stride now. And I have a lot of work left to do in that position. But I do pay attention, I do read the postings, and it's been very easy for me to read other Oakland County and area postings and say no thank you, that's not the right opportunity for me. When I read the Brighton position announcement candidate profile, it spoke to me. I felt as I reviewed the candidate profile that it aligns really well with my experiences, the skills that I think I have. And it felt like an opportunity that I needed to pursue. So I did some research, spoke to as many people as I could, which just reinforced my decision to move forward in this process. Submitted my application, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be received.
Great, thank you. So what's your vision of the future for Brighton area schools under your leadership?
So, first of all, I think before looking at the future, it's very important that I really understand at a detailed level the present and in the past as well. And it's easy for me to see, working close to Brighton for my entire career, this is a very successful school district with many qualities that have served it well over many years. So initially, it would be very important for me to understand on a deeper level what's made Brighton so successful for the last 20, 30 years. And I don't think I could really arrive at a vision until I really understand that. That would have to happen through conversation with the board, with administration, with our teachers, with other staff members, with community members. Only after really developing some knowledge and understanding of what makes Brighton Brighton could I arrive at a vision. However, strong academic achievement is a given. A commitment to sound financial practices, a given. Facilities, which is easy to see are a high priority in Brighton. Again, that would clearly be a given. So continuing on with the tradition of outstanding academic achievement is a certainty. But to get more specific than that, I would really need to engage in a process of really getting to know what makes Brighton special in 2020. And only then would I feel that I could establish a vision for where the district should be moving in the near and distant future.
Okay, thank you. Based on what you know or have learned at Brighton area schools, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term challenges our district will need to address? And how would your background and skills help us to address these challenges?
Well, even though it's clear that Brighton has been in a solid financial position in the recent, the past few years, funding issues are of critical importance for every school district in Michigan. So I don't think that it's possible to answer this question for any district in Michigan without talking about funding. And as a superintendent, it's very important that for me to advocate for funding from the state and federal level so that we can adequately educate children. There's been a lot of research in recent years about how expensive it really is to educate students. And we've not been adequately funded for the past decade across the state. So that's one area of focus that I think is important to advocate for in all schools. In Brighton, I think you said long-term, so I'm going to stay away from our immediate challenges that we're all facing, because I do believe that while we may never be the same districts that we were 2 years ago, this is not going to be a long-term issue. We're going to move past it. But I think continuing to be innovative, to stay at the cutting edge of trends in education while we're maintaining the strong traditional academic programming that's made Brighton successful for many years. I think recognizing that even in a community like Brighton with many, many students who aspire for college and higher learning, there are also students who need other forms of programming and making sure that we offer a lot of opportunity in the trades as well. So I think all of those are issues facing the Brighton area schools in the near future.
Hello, Dr. Kinsler, my name is Laura Mitchell.
Hi, Laura.
I'm going to be asking you some questions about direct relations, or district relations, okay? Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to the Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community.
So I mentioned in my introductory remarks that relationships mean everything to me. Education is a human business, and we can only be successful in educating children if we have really strong relationships. As a teacher, the connections I built with my students were critically important. I feel like that's what I was most effective in. I was a young teacher learning my craft, certainly developing content knowledge, but I was very effective right from the start in building relationships with my students and their parents. And I feel like that was a major factor in my success early in my career, and probably a significant reason that I was able to earn an administrative position in my 20s, that I could build relationships. So as an assistant principal, the same. I built strong relationships with the students that needed me most. I built meaningful relationships with their parents. I was a resource and a positive impact on their lives. And as a result, earned credibility and respect in the community. As an elementary principal for 11 years, I worked very, very closely with my staff. I started in 2006 with a very veteran, seasoned staff, and gradually over 11 years, nearly that entire staff turned over, and I had the opportunity to build a new one. And the relationships that I built with that staff resulted in success for our kids. Same with parents, visibility, very important. The car line at the beginning and the end of the day is the most important part of the day for an elementary principal, because it's the time I get to see all of the students, or many of them at least, and many of their families, brothers, sisters, all kinds of other community members. So I would capitalize on that time so that I can connect. In Novi, Novi is a large district of about 6,700 students, or at least we hope we still have 6,700 students in a few weeks. In 3 years, I've been successful in building relationships with many different groups within our district. Obviously, I work very closely with our central office administrative team, but also our principals, our directors, teacher leaders, secretaries, bus drivers, maintenance team, parents to a lesser degree, but certainly some of our parents that are involved in our committees, board members. And I believe that the key to my success in Novi has been quickly establishing relational trust with all of those groups. The packets that I've provided for you have letters of recommendation, one from one of our bargaining group presidents, which I think speaks very effectively to that. So as superintendent, it's critically important to be connected to the community. Now it's not just the district, it's the district and the Brighton area school district community. I feel that very much like Okemos and Novi, the Brighton schools are a big part of the community. And as superintendent, it'll be very important to build relationships with all of those employee groups, with our parents, with business owners, with the community, which means being present, means spending time in the community, both during the workday and not. And recognizing that the only way to be successful is to establish that kind of a relationship with the community. So I think I have that skill to build relationships and trust, and that will be a very high priority.
What are some examples of community activities in which you have provided leadership? And in what ways did this benefit your district?
So I want to begin with Okemos, and I live in Okemos, have for many, many years. So my community involvement is broad. Certainly it began as a teacher and an administrator, but also now, for a good number of years, I've been a parent in the community. So I would use my position in the school district to build relationships and to work with community groups across the district. So that means volunteering at different events that the school district was connected to. I served on the Okemos Education Foundation as a administrative trustee for a good number of years. A lot of the work I would do in the community was informal, was, just being a resource for people. It's still challenging for me to get through my year on a Sunday because I see many of the parents that I worked with for so many years, many of the students that I was connected with for a long time. And I've been out of the school district for 3 years, but I'm still very much a part of the community. So in Novi, I've been there 3 years, and it's been a challenge because I can connect within the district. I spent a lot of time connecting with our principals, with our directors, with our teacher leaders, with people throughout the district. I don't have as much opportunity in my current position to connect in the community, but that's gradually beginning to change as I get to know some of the key players in different functions in the community, parents that are doing things to support the district that I can get involved with. We have a program in the summertime called Feed the Need. We don't have a tremendous amount of need in Novi, but we do have some. And we have a parent-run program that the school district supports where we provide meals in the summertime and during COVID as well for the community. So reaching out and connecting with some of the community members that run that program, some of our local clergy members who support the district, some of our city of Novi officials, building relationships with them so that we can collaborate and work together. In administrative roles, it's important to build those kinds of connections, and they're mutually beneficial to the community and the district as well, and that's our work. As superintendent, it's on a higher level, and the visibility is even more important.
Thank you. How do you think various stakeholders such as parents, community members, and staff members should be involved in our planning process and in setting direction for the district?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. How do you think various stakeholders such as parents, community members, and staff members should be involved in our planning process and in setting direction for the district?
So I think high-level planning needs to be a community activity that includes parents, that includes all stakeholders. Certainly teachers, certainly other staff members in the district. And to successfully plan for the future of the district, voices need to be heard. Different stakeholders have different perspectives, and we need to hear from all of them. We need to provide them with genuine opportunity to tell their stories. We need to listen carefully. We need a process that values everyone's voice. Only after really providing that opportunity and giving their perspectives careful thought, can we arrive at that vision that I spoke, that you asked me about with the first question. That's the process. That's how we establish a vision, by hearing from stakeholders across the community. That's how we arrive at direction for the district. So there are a number of different organizations that offer strategic planning support. They're all geared towards hearing the voices of people throughout the community. So that's the first step in the process. And then through careful facilitation, we narrow down to what are some true directions that are important for large groups of stakeholders within the community. And we arrive at a plan. And then it's the job of the district to operationalize the plan, to build action steps that allow us to move in the direction where we want to go. And then, of course, we measure our progress, we make revision, we adjust, we celebrate our successes, and then after a period of time, we restart the cycle. So it's continuous improvement. And that's driven by community input.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Kinzer. I'm Alicia Reed.
Kylie.
In what specific ways should our district be working with other local districts to meet student achievement goals for our students and for theirs?
I missed one word. Could you maybe just repeat the question, please?
Sure. In what specific ways should our district be working with other local districts to meet the student achievement goals of both our students and theirs?
We always can learn from our colleagues. Collaboration is a critical piece of improvement. The Brighton area schools are clearly very successful, but so are a number of other districts. And those districts can learn from the Brighton area schools. The Brighton area schools can learn from other districts. Collaborating with people across the region and maybe even in other parts of the state offers tremendous benefit. As a principal in Okemos, I was part of numerous groups that involved principals in other districts in Union County. And some of them similar to Okemos, many of them not similar at all. And those conversations yielded great results. And it was common that modifications might have to be made to ideas that came from some of those conversations because our district was very different. But the concept was not ours. We learned it from someone else, made the decision it was an excellent idea for our district, made the changes necessary for it to be effective in our setting, implemented, and we're thankful we did. As in my role as Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources in Novi, I'm part of a countywide group of human resources directors. We meet at Oakland schools, used to be once a month, now we meet via Zoom much more frequently than that. And a number of those people in a very short time have become very important resources to me. The network that our OASPA group provides is tremendous support for me, which I know benefits the Novi Community School District. We're all better together. And hearing the ideas that they're considering in their own districts, of course, many of them would not be appropriate in mine, but many of them are. And certainly sharing my own thoughts and ideas, we have rich conversation. And as a result, we establish plans for our group and ideas that benefit the districts. There are, I think, 28 different districts within the county, and I'm in the process of developing relationships with the assistant superintendent or the HR director in each district. It's a challenge because the turnover is high, but every year I look forward to getting back with that group because there will be new contributors, and I value them. School districts need to work together. We need to benefit from the thinking that exists in other places. We have an obligation to share our own successes, and that's how all children benefit. I as superintendent in this district, my priority would be the students in the Brighton area schools, but I don't think that alleviates me from the responsibility for caring about the success of students across the state. We're all in this together.
Thank you. What impact do you feel the Every Student Succeeds Act legislation is having on Michigan's school districts?
Well, I think it, more than anything else, it's provided standards that have benefited districts that maybe were struggling prior. So I think it's helped raise the basement of achievement. I'm not sure that in the districts that I've spent my career, it's been anywhere near as impactful as that. I believe the minimum standards and requirements for accountability, a lot of it speaks to low performing schools. Certainly a lot of the intervention pieces and preschool measures, we have well established, and I'm very confident are well established in the Brighton area schools as well. So I wouldn't imagine that it would be anywhere near as impactful in a district like Brighton as it might be in many other districts. But I do believe that it's built on kind of the foundation of No Child Left Behind, and there were some significant improvements. From an HR lens, certainly, the notion of highly qualified and how we've evolved from that has offered us flexibility. So I think it's an improvement, but I really do believe that a lot of that benefit has gone to the districts that really needed it the most, and I don't think that's the right in the schools in most cases.
I've got one last question for you. Okay. What impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
Well, I think it's in probably its purest form, it has created a more consistent effort across the state to build educational systems in schools that really benefit all students. I think of things like what was RTI, response to intervention, now in TSS, and how we implemented that really almost universally across the state. Certainly more developed systems in some districts than others, but I would cite that as the most impactful educational trend change of my career. I was involved in the Oklahoma Public Schools in implementing our systems of support for students, and the impact on our students was significant. I believe that was driven by accountability, standardized testing. It's a tool to support all students. It's not all positive. Certainly, I'm not sure, as a principal, I never found that our MEAT data was anywhere near our most significant data, nor our MSTEP data. We had far more relevant data that really told the story of our students' achievement than that. So it's probably the premium that's placed on it is much more for accountability than truly is beneficial to districts. The accountability piece for teachers has driven some more standardization in how we evaluate teachers. And I know that there were many districts in the state that did not have strong evaluation systems, and now are moving in the direction of improvement in that area. So I think that's a benefit. I've been blessed to work in 2 districts with strong systems. We use the Danielson model in Okemos, so I had experience with that as an administrator for many years. In Novi, we use Marzano. So essentially the system or tool you use, they're all built on similar research. So there are consistent pieces across systems. What's most important is the work that the administrators and teachers do together for growth and improvement. That's not really accountability, but the state views it as such. It really should be about feedback and growth and improvement. You know, Marzano and Danielson would say that their systems were not meant to evaluate teachers, their systems were meant to help teachers grow. And that's the work that I always try to do as an administrator, whether I'm evaluating teachers or principals, is provide meaningful feedback and regular conversation to help people improve. And the effectiveness rating that goes along with it is really a byproduct, not the most compelling piece. The relationship that I build over time working with the teachers is what matters. Same thing now as I work with the principals, as I work with our directors. I try to be a consistent support. So the fact that it's required by the state and there's an accountability piece to it is not what's most important to me. The work I do with individuals to support their growth is.
Thank you.
Mr. Kinzer, my name is Ken Stahl. Thank you for answering our call. I'd like to ask you about your leadership attributes. First question is, please describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you might vary from that style.
So I don't think this answer will surprise you, but I'm an extremely collaborative leader. I work with people. My work is, rolling up my sleeves, taking off my suit coat, and doing the work with people. That's how I lead. That's how I build relationships, and that's how I provide leadership. Yeah, that's the only way, from my perspective, on a regular basis to get the results that I know we need. I try to model active listening. I'm very interested in what other voices in the room have to say. I think everyone offers value. So when I lead any kind of a process, that's always the intention. I believe that gives results most often. I want to give an example that is exactly 3 days old. So on Friday, I guess I'll back up a couple steps. Like the Brighton area schools in Novi, we are knee deep in planning for return to school with in-person instruction. One of my greatest challenges is staffing. So as the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, I need to make sure that we can staff both a hybrid model where we're going to have students in groups coming to school 2 days a week each. And then we also have to staff a virtual model. And for the most part, it's falling together nicely, but we were wrestling with a challenging dilemma on Friday, and that was how would we staff our K-6 specials, both for virtual and hybrid instruction. Sounds relatively simple, I assure you. We learned quickly it was not. So we had a 90-minute meeting scheduled on Friday with some of our Office of Academics administrators, as well as our Teachers Union president, 2 of our specials teachers, and a 4th grade classroom teacher. And we struggled for several hours. We went back and forth about different models, saw why they wouldn't work, and eventually, about 3.5 hours in, had a breakthrough with an idea that we knew very quickly had great potential. 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon rolled around, and we still didn't have it nailed, but we knew we were on the right track. So we all agreed that we would spend time over the weekend processing and come back together at least via Zoom on Monday. So knowing the people in the room, I knew that it wasn't just going to be people processing over the weekend. There were going to be multiple phone calls, probably some Zoom calls, maybe some people meeting, who knows. And by Saturday night at 6:30, there was a model in my inbox. So I reviewed it, and of course, my initial reaction was, well, why did it take us this long to figure this out? But that didn't matter. What did matter was the fact that we had a viable plan that still isn't perfect, but it's going to work for us. And by this morning, when I met with our principals and shared it, it was clear it was going to work for us. So I facilitated that meeting. I think the fact that we all kind of allowed ourselves to struggle and process, listen to our ideas, provide feedback to one another, and that even though we had people in the room that were coming from very different positions, working together in a really collaborative way, rolling up our sleeves and doing the work is how we landed on the result. So I'm very confident that as I am responsible for all of our staffing, that September 8th is going to roll around and we are going to have all of our positions effectively staffed. We're going to take care of teachers within our organization that cannot teach in person because they have health concerns that might make that not safe for them. We are going to work with teachers that maybe don't get an assignment that they really want, but understand is what has to happen for the district. So that's my leadership style. I also recognize there are times that that collaborative approach is not going to be effective or circumstances don't allow for that. And I think COVID is a tremendous example that, our day-to-day typical decision-making and leadership approaches sometimes have to change. I want to just give you an example that I just observed over the past 6 weeks to illustrate that point. So Dr. Steve Matthews is our superintendent in the Novi Community School District, and he is very much like me, a collaborative leader. However, making the decision or making the recommendation that our Board of Education could support needed an approach that was not his norm and not his typical mode of operation. He spoke passionately to administrators and teachers about his belief that we could safely provide an in-person model of instruction for our community. We surveyed parents. Parents made it clear, many of them wanted virtual. However, many of our parents made it very clear they needed an in-person option for their children. And they didn't want to send their kids to a private school like I have to do in Oaks. So we worked very hard under Dr. Matthews' leadership to create a model that we felt was safe, that he could recommend to the Board of Education and they could support. That was not his typical model of leadership, where he facilitates conversations in the room and we reach consensus. He drove that decision. As superintendent, there are times the superintendent must drive decisions and certainly collect feedback and input from stakeholders. But there are times when difficult decisions have to be made. And the superintendent has to have the conviction to make them and to accept the outcome. Sometimes that means building consensus over time with people, getting them on board. The relationships that are built through that collaborative leadership style day after day really benefit you in those times when you have to make decisions that are difficult and maybe cannot be made collaboratively. So the higher up I have moved in leadership positions, the more frequently I found myself in situations, certainly not like Dr. Matthews' position this summer, but sometimes, in my assistant superintendent role, perhaps it's a staff disciplinary situation. Perhaps it's in negotiations. But I find myself in positions where I have to take a stand. And my decision-making model or my leadership model is not what's the most comfortable to me, but I know it's what's going to be effective given that. And I accept and know that that's an important piece to our success. And I feel with experience, I've been successful in determining when it's that time. Certainly that took years of opportunity to make mistakes, to learn and grow from them. And I don't think you ever finish learning. You continue to learn from things that maybe don't go well. But I believe I've developed a pretty good sense for what decision-making, what leadership model is going to serve me best. And effective leaders have to have a number of them in their toolbox.
Thank you. Next question, what is the most difficult situation you've had to deal with in your educational career, and how was it resolved?
So we're in unprecedented times, and there's no way I can answer anything other than, working through the last, whatever it is, 5 months. Obviously, if I were sitting with you a year ago, my answer would be very different, but working through the challenges we face in this pandemic, this is the hardest time that I believe any of us have ever had in education. And at the same time, I feel like it offers us amazing opportunities for growth. So March 13th, just the night before at 11 o'clock, the governor made the decision that we would be closed beginning on Monday. And we had to, with no real notice, shift on a dime and make some very challenging decisions. So one of my key functions that day was to work effectively with our bargaining group leadership. And I'm fortunate to have tremendous relationships with all of them. And spent my drive-in, at about 6 in the morning, maybe 6:30, from Okemos, so I have an hour every morning, so I make a lot of early morning phone calls, talking to 2 of them and assuring them that we're gonna figure this out. We don't have all the answers, but we're going to figure it out. So that conversation began then. We probably spoke 4 or 5 different times over the course of the day. And by the end of the day, we arrived at some plans for how we were going to get through what we thought at that time was the next 3 weeks. And then, of course, we learned that it would be much longer than that. So those relationships were maintained through constant communication. Got really good at utilizing Zoom, of course, like everyone else. And working for me, my focus had to be staff, but I look at that as an opportunity to serve students, because as the human resources leader in our district, the work I do with staff is designed to benefit students, because that's what our work is all about. So we needed to work together as district leadership and our labor groups so that we could provide for students. And what we were able to provide was not perfect by any means, but I'm pretty proud of the outcomes and what we were able to do. And I think that experience is what's going to serve us well in Novi for the work we're going to do this year. As I speak with people in other districts and I hear about the reaction of teachers to in-person instruction, I hear that there is tremendous fear. I hear that teachers don't want to go back to the classroom in other districts. In Novi, our challenge is finding enough teachers to staff our virtual assignments. And that's because our teachers have confidence in the work we've done to implement systems to keep them as safe as possible. our teachers have trust that we're going to staff our positions appropriately, that we're going to set up classes that will work, that they'll have support from our Office of Academics and from our content area leaders so that the curricular work they do is supported, so that it's not all on them. And I feel like the work of the last 5 months, it's been incredibly challenging, but it's also empowering because the work we've done by doing this together is going to position us for success. And I hope every district has that, because this is going to be an incredibly difficult year. And getting through it so that students can have the safest and the most successful school experience possible for this year is dependent on us. And it's dependent on the relationships that exist between administrators, teachers, and all of those other employee groups, because it's on us to deliver for students. And our students need us now more than ever. So that's, I guess, I'm not sure that I completely answered your question, but that's why I think the last 5 months has been the most difficult possible time. And I could give experiences on a small scale, but none of them compare to the work we've had to do over the last 5 months. And there's not an end in sight at this point. We will just keep doing the work. And, now that we're hearing a little bit about legislative action at the state level, we're going to be reevaluating our plans on a regular basis, which we should do, and continuing to make modifications that are best for kids.
I think you did well with that question. Last question, how do you lead in situations where you don't have authority over the people involved? Have you been in that position before in your career? And if so, how have you handled it?
Sure, I work, now, I guess technically, I've got positional authority over most of the people in the district, other than my assistant superintendent colleagues and the superintendent. But positional authority is not what helps you be successful as a leader. I think everyone knows when you have it, but that doesn't mean you're going to be successful in helping people get to where they need to go. That happens through accountability, personal accountability from the leader. That happens by doing the work together. That happens by modeling and relationship building. So I don't use positional authority unless I have to. I suppose there have been times where I've used it when necessary, but those times are rare. And it's more about just working alongside, in my case, it's often our administrators, our principals, our directors, providing them support, providing them information, following through, helping them with their work. And if they need me to make a decision that's squarely in my lane, I make it. Found myself in that situation this morning, meeting with our principals as they're firing staff and questions at me. And, we're kind of in a position where our typical model may not apply, and we got to figure it out as we go. So I'm just giving my absolute best thinking, but decisions have to be made so we can get teachers in positions. And I'm confident that I can make those decisions as we go, because I have that trust and collaboration and support from our bargaining groups. And I know that none of these decisions conflict with the contract, but I still need teachers to buy in, and I know their leadership will. So that's success because of working together, not because I have the authority to make decisions. I've been blessed to work with a number of tremendous superintendents. None of them throw their weight around. None of them exert positional authority on a regular basis. Everyone in the room knows they're the superintendent and they have it. They're effective because it's only used when necessary, but they're effective without relying on it. So I would never want to exercise that authority in any kind of capricious way. It's about providing leadership and modeling it. And I feel like my career has been all about leadership, and all of it is collaborative and working effectively with people. You know, even as a principal, I would rarely tell teachers what to do. It was more about us together figuring out what was in the best interest of our students and building a climate, a culture in the building that was best for kids. And my job was to lead it. My job was not to tell teachers what to do and hold them accountable when they didn't do it. I wanted to empower teachers to do what was best for kids within the constraints that we agreed to. And that's leadership.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Dr. Kinzer. I'm Angela Krebs.
Nice to meet you.
You too, thank you. I'm going to ask you a couple questions on instruction and curriculum. So the first one I'd like to ask you is if you could please give us examples of educational change or reform that you have initiated in your current or previous positions that have led to improvements in student learning.
So I spoke of this a little earlier, but I'd like to develop it further. As an elementary principal, I started at Hiawatha in 2006, and that was at the very beginning of the development of response to intervention, which is all about developing systems of support for all learners. So we started our work with literacy. We implemented strong core reading programming, as well as universal screeners, which gave us really timely reading data. A system of interventions that supported on an increasingly intensive level support for students who needed it. And within 2 or 3 years, the results were startling. To me, the most significant result was we were no longer moving students along in the evaluation process towards identification of a disability because we had other options. We now were meeting the needs of students in general education, where they belong. Gradually, we expanded that to math and behavior, tried to duplicate a lot of the process, and found that it didn't always translate perfectly, so we worked to help it evolve. And it was a 10-year process probably, and it's still, it's still ongoing. I have many friends who are still teachers and administrators in my district in the building where I worked in. They tell me occasionally about things they're doing, and it's progress from when I left. So that culture of continuous improvement in that area continues. Our systems of support in Novi are impressive. Slightly different approach. Certainly the ability, we have more resources in Novi, and certainly the ability to staff positions has helped. But we have, social workers in every building. We have interventionists and specialists to provide support. We have the staffing to provide win time at all of our grade levels. And I can see that the process that helped buildings in Novi get to that point was similar to what I was able to lead in Oakland. So I would look back on leading implementation of multi-tiered systems of support as the most significant curricular effort that I've led. A second one that I want to mention, we engaged in a strategic planning process in Okemos in, I want to say 2012. I might be off the year. And through that process, a concept was identified in the community that we identified as an issue. And that was, we identified developing greater cultural competency as a major initiative in the district. And I remember sitting in the room thinking, I don't really know exactly what that means. I thought of myself as an administrator and thought, gosh, I treat all of our kids the same. And I didn't realize that was part of the problem. So gradually over time, as an administrative team, we embarked on a growth journey of becoming more reflective, of really considering our viewpoints, our experiences, our perspectives with regards to culture. And when I say culture, I mean race, religion, sexual identity, gender identity, language, socioeconomic status. There are probably many more. Some of those things very visible forms of culture, some very invisible. And we made it a priority to become more confident, to create practices, policies, curriculum, pedagogy that were equitable to all students. And it became clear to me quickly that this was going to take a long time, that people don't change in this process overnight. I think, I'm almost a decade in and I got a long way to go. So in my doctoral program, we really had the opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue and study of really pertinent, relevant topics. And this is what I ended up writing my dissertation on. I arrived at Novi in 2017, and we have a district monument. It's a visual representation of what's most important to us in the district. And social justice is a pillar in our monument. It looks different in Novi than it did in Opus, even though the demographics are very similar. But we've got some pretty amazing things happening in our district around student voice, around restorative practices, and they excite me. So when I work in our mentoring program with our young teachers, these are topics that we spend a lot of time talking about. So I still look for opportunities to engage with our principals, teachers, and others about these topics because to me they are that impactful.
Okay, thank you. What do you believe are currently the biggest challenges with special education in our region? How should these challenges be addressed?
Well, I guess this isn't a challenge, but I want to comment on it anyway. Unified athletics are amazing. So let me finish that thought. So I experienced that for the first time in Novi a couple years ago, and I know that it really was a cooperative venture between the Brighton area schools and the Novi County School District. And after experiencing a couple of different unified athletic events, wow. So I'm thrilled to see that now in openness where my children are still there, that they now, it's spreading. And it is, you want to talk about impact. Watching one of those athletic events, everyone should do that because it will change your perspective. So now to the question. Special education is a unique challenge, and I think it's contextual. It looks different in different places. As a building principal, I had the great fortune of having a self-contained program in my building that really focused on students with behavioral challenges, a lot of kids on the autism spectrum, emotional impairments, and they made our school, a richer place. My own children were students in my school, and them having the opportunity to have students in their classes with those kind of struggles benefited my students. So I learned a lot as an administrator because I was fortunate enough to have that program in my building. I learned through running hundreds and hundreds of IEP meetings to support parents and to treat all of our students as general education students and to recognize what special education can be. In Novi, we have, I believe, we probably spend more money per student with an IEP than, I can't imagine anybody spends more. The amount of services that we provide are incredible. But I realize that everybody can't do that. And programming for every one of our students, no matter what their needs are, is the challenge. And creating a culture of inclusivity for all of our students so that they're all general education students and have their best opportunity to be successful is essential. So I think those are the challenges that I see. I've been blessed to work in districts that I think serve special education students really well. I have no doubt that Brighton is another district that does that too.
Okay, I have one more question here. So how can we best meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
That's a fantastic question. And I'll be honest and tell you that even 25 years ago, when I was a high school teacher at Okemos High School, and our curriculum at that time was entirely college prep, and I would teach senior writing classes that were very rigorous. And I had students in my class that I was not serving their needs. We need to place value on programming for all students. And I believe most high schools, especially high schools that really have a high percentage of students that are going off to four-year universities, have work to do in removing the stigma of the trades and of career prep that doesn't always include four-year university. And we need to serve all of our students, and that means we need to figure out ways to do both. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have rigorous college prep programming. I'm a strong advocate of providing IB classes, providing AP classes, providing rigorous curriculum for all students. But that doesn't alleviate our responsibility to find opportunities for students that don't fit that profile. And we need to do that. I can't say that I have all of the answers. I think it's a challenge. But it has to be a priority. And, you know, when students don't select programs that would really benefit them because we've not done our part, no, that's shame on us.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Kitzer. My name is Roger Myers, and I have some questions for you this evening regarding operations and finance.
Nice to meet you.
Please describe your experience with budget development and financial management. What is the greatest financial challenge you have faced, and how did you successfully resolve it?
So, one of those great superintendents that I worked for in Okemos, one of the things I loved about her the most was she involved us as principals directly in budget process. And this was in the years of recession, so we were regularly cutting the budget. And I was involved in many conversations where we really looked at the impact of our decisions and learned to make decisions that were on the outer layers of the onion and not close to the core was most important. So that was a meaningful experience. I want to share one particular example that I think where I learned the most. So during that time, enrollment in our schools declining rapidly. And it became clear that we were going to have to make some really hard decisions. We cut everything on the outer layers that we could cut. And our decisions now were close to the core. So the superintendent put together a community forum process where we really looked at options, and principals had the role of leading groups within that larger conversation. And after months of study, we made the decision that we had to close 2 of our neighborhood elementary schools. For me, at that time, my elementary school was in the most affluent area in the community. Certainly I had by far the lowest free and reduced lunch numbers. So I was going to take on populations that were very different. So managing that process, working through the decision, that was a very challenging decision, taking an entire year to plan for implementation, which a lot of people were critical of because we needed the savings right now, but we made the decision that we were going to do this right, even if we can't do it right now. And we worked through that process and very successfully closed 2 schools within our community, reconfigured grades, grade levels, put populations of students and teachers together who hadn't worked together in the past. And my school went from becoming the highest socioeconomic school in the district to the lowest overnight and became a better school because we had a richer culture. We had diversity that we didn't have before. So that was a difficult budget time that we enacted a process to make really challenging decisions and came together as a community over a period of time, made the decision, implemented the changes, and not only did we realize a much better financial future, I think we became a better community as well. So I think that's a good example.
Thank you. My next question is, how have you gone about prioritizing the allocation of financial resources in the best interests of students, staff, and the district as a whole? As part of that answer, what are your top 3 priorities when establishing a district budget?
Do you mind reading that one more time?
Sure. How have you gone about prioritizing the allocation of financial resources in the best interests of students, staff, and the district as a whole? And as part of that, what are your top 3 priorities when establishing a district budget?
Okay, so I used the analogy a little earlier of an onion. And my priority is to stay as far away from the core as possible. That means instruction. Look for savings in every other area. Figure out what we can do to save money so that what makes a district successful remains as untouched as possible. The core of the district is instructional programming. And that can mean core instruction at the elementary grade levels. It can mean instructional approaches at the middle level that might include teaming, let's use that as an example. The array of opportunities that we can offer high school students, both core classes as well as electives and advanced opportunities. It can mean programming for other areas in the district, but the core instructional programming has to be the highest priority. And then safety, I mean, student safety is really the highest priority, but I feel that we can do that without spending a lot of money by establishing really strong practices and protocols and being creative with finances. So those 2 priorities, and then the culture of the district and how we can support and establish a really positive, effective culture. It doesn't mean we have to pay the highest salaries. It doesn't mean, I think we have to be competitive. But it means the relationships that we develop with our staff and how we can effectively do that by building a culture where the Brighton area schools is where people want to work. And as a result, where families want to live. And that's certainly going to help us financially as well.
Thank you. The next question is, please share your experiences with non-traditional revenue generating programs and shared services. How can these be maximized for the greatest benefit to our district?
I'd like to talk about 2 things. I want to talk about shared services to begin with, and then I'd also like to talk about experiences I have with bond projects. So first of all, we have a limited shared services program in Novi, so I have a little bit of experience with it. Nowhere near to the level of the Brighton area schools. It is very clear to me that shared services are a critical piece of the financial picture of this district. And this district has been incredibly innovative in utilizing that tool to build a solid foundation from a budget lens. And that will continue to be an incredibly significant, important part of the future of this district. The next superintendent in this district is going to have to learn quickly what makes the shared services programming in this district successful. What are the relationships and who are the key pieces, the key players in making it work, and support them. I know that recent legislation has limited growth, so I don't think it's so much about growing. Maybe it's more now about evaluating the programs that are currently here and utilizing and maintaining the most successful of them. But I have a little experience with shared services, but becoming significantly knowledgeable about it would be a very high priority for me very quickly. Bond projects. So we passed a $185 million bond in Novi last November. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to play a significant role from beginning to end, probably 6 months prior to our election and 8 months, working on our community committee, to plan for the bond, to take a look at the amount of money that we might be able to generate, how we might allocate that money, what kinds of projects are most important in the district, then to share information with stakeholders, so that's teachers, that was PTO groups, booster groups, different parent groups across the district, helping them understand what the proposal would be, answering questions. The bond passed, and then we shifted our focus to design elements, working with project, our owner's rep, our architects, our construction company, to really begin the design of projects. Pleased to say that our first round of projects are about a week away from completion. We started with some easy security projects that we could do in the summer. And now we are really seriously planning for our second round and build a new 5-6 building, which is going to be amazing, as well as significant improvements in 2 of our elementary schools. So I've had the opportunity to take a leadership role in development of those projects. Learned a lot about construction, about how construction company, the architect, the owners rep work together with the district. Part of our capital projects committee with our Board of Education, working with them to help them understand the work that we're doing and proposing, making sure they have the accurate information and knowledge they need. So down the road, we're going to do some significant security improvements in our middle school and high school. We're going to build a robotics facility. We're going to build an indoor athletic facility similar to what I think you're going to do as well. And this is going to make a significant difference for students in Novi. So I feel in the last year and a half, that's an experience that's really been beneficial for me. And being allowed to take a leadership role with that has been, helpful for me to understand that piece where I didn't have experience prior.
Real quickly, we have about 15 minutes.
Okay.
My final question, Dr. Hitzer, what is the most effective way to finance capital improvements, both in the short term and long term?
Well, certainly, I think that you can pass it on. I mean, by all means. Yeah, we were fortunate in Novi that we were able to generate $185 million in tax reduction, the millage rate reduction. So we were in a very fortunate position. Working with Dr. David Arson, who was a finance professor in my doctoral program, and really one of the most connected and influential financial people in the state, I learned a lot about equity and about how the system doesn't necessarily treat all communities and districts the same. That's unfortunate, but that doesn't mean districts that have advantages shouldn't utilize them in the best interest of their students. So I've done a little bit of study of the bond project that you have going and some of the projects that you have. I certainly don't feel that I have deep knowledge, but some surface level knowledge at least. So I can see that capital projects are moving forward and Brighton as well. And, just driving the community and seeing facilities, it's pretty obvious that this district has been successful in capital projects for quite some time because your facilities are very impressive. I've not been in many of them, but I've certainly seen them all. If you're forced to finance capital projects from the general fund, that's a very challenging position to be in and will limit your ability to get things done. So capitalizing on non-general fund resources is key. And then I would also say maintaining the facilities you have so that they are as useful for as long as possible and as efficient as well. Certainly, I've read a fair amount of research about the difference in general fund costs in maintaining buildings that are well taken care of versus not so well taken care of. So I think that's a high priority also.
Thank you.
About 10 minutes.
Thank you. Can I ask, is that for the whole, is that just for questions or total?
That's total. Yes.
My name is Bill Trombley.
Nice to meet you.
Please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
Well, I mentioned earlier the work I did in the Oakland Public Schools with my staff in my elementary school, and very proud of that. When I was fortunate enough to begin that job, as I said earlier, the staff was seasoned and veteran and highly professional and competent. I learned a lot from them, and the culture in the building was very positive. Over 11 years, that staff turned over. I hired virtually an entire staff, and the culture, if anything, improved from when I started. So the ability to accomplish that over more than a decade that's my most successful staffing accomplishment in my career. And I still care very much about that building, even though I'm not there. But I think 4 or 5 of the teachers in that building live in my neighborhood, so I see them regularly, and I hear how they're doing. I had the benefit of mentoring the current principal there. We still talk on the phone regularly, and supporting that, seeing the success that that building continues to have is, a very, it's a proud accomplishment for me. In Novi, developing hiring practices that are talent-based and help us identify and select the best candidates for positions. That's work that started before my arrival. I certainly do not take full credit for it. However, we've absolutely enhanced that over the last 3 years. And COVID has, I think, paused some of our efforts, but as soon as we're on track, I have ideas for how we can take that to the next level, and I think that will help us attract the best possible teachers we can, and hopefully some more diverse candidates as well.
I'll just ask you one more question and then leave a little bit of time here at the end.
Thank you.
How would the president of your teachers union describe you?
Well, you can read the letter that she wrote, which is in your file folder. So you can see for yourself, but she would say that I'm all about supporting teachers. I think there's a risk in me saying that, in a superintendent interview. And I don't want, at the bargaining table, I think our teachers are not always happy with me. But the reality is that successful instruction is dependent on outstanding teachers who are well supported. So I need to work with them directly, I need to work with our principals, and to see that they have the support they need to be as successful as possible. And because teachers in Novi know that, I have a lot of credibility with them. She would support that. She would say that I'm someone that she has respect and trust for.
Thank you.
Okay. We want to give, we certainly want to give you an opportunity to have a few minutes now to ask any questions you might have of the board.
So, before I ask a question, I want to make sure that I maintain at least 1 minute for a closing statement. So if we get to that last minute, I have 6. Perfect, I think we're good. So I'm only going to ask one question, but I want to open it to any of you who might choose to answer. So that may be more than one of you. So my question is, the candidate profile in the position announcement is clear and was a major factor in my interest in this position. But beyond the profile, could you comment on what are the most essential characteristics you're seeking in your next superintendent?
Visionary. Out of the box thinker.
Communicator, coach, mentor.
I think somebody that is a very diversified leader that brings a broad-based skill set and knowledge of all of the multifaceted situations that a superintendent will face in successfully leading a district of our size and depth. I think it's critically important that, we have someone that, someone, like Ken said, is a visionary, someone that really exudes leadership regardless of the situation that they're in and appreciates, the importance of really understanding all of the various facets, because, that's obviously very important to us, is that we are successful, in all levels of the organization.
I think I would say engagement with the students and being seen on a regular basis and, talking with them and getting to know. I think that's a big thing here.
Absolutely.
Great.
And I would add on to what everyone has said here that, we're looking for a superintendent, or at least I'm looking for a superintendent that is capable of identifying the other leaders within our district that we need and providing them with the support and the opportunity to enable them to help our district grow. So we need a strong leader at the top of the house that can empower everyone else around them.
I would say dedication to the district and the community on a 24-hour day basis, both on a personal and a professional level.
Everyone has really said a lot of these things, and just like, I'll give you your minute.
Thank you. How much, 2 minutes? Awesome. So I hope you don't mind, but I don't want to miss any of the points in my statement, so I'm going to look at my page. It's succinct, but it says what I want to say. So first, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for this great opportunity. I'm aware of the tremendous responsibility you have for overseeing the safe and successful return to school. And I appreciate that you've maintained your published schedule for the search process during this unprecedented time. Thank you for that. I do have great appreciation for the work you're doing. In my letter of interest, I shared with you that I'm very happy in my current position of Assistant Superintendent of Resources in the Novi Community School District and have not been actively seeking superintendent positions. I decided to pursue this opportunity because I feel that it's an excellent fit for me, as I've spent my career successfully leading in a variety of roles in 2 very successful districts that have much in common with regulated schools. After meeting with you this evening, that feeling has been reinforced. Got that in parentheses because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to say it.
I was wondering why you said that.
I'm glad I did.
You already wrote it.
I remain very confident that my skills, educational background, and leadership experiences in the Okemos Public Schools and the Novi Community School District have prepared me well for the demands of successfully leading a large, high-achieving district like the Brighton Area Schools. I wish you the best as you meet with the impressive candidates on your interview schedule this week, and I look forward to the opportunity to meet with you again in 2 weeks, should I be selected for the second round of interviews. Thank you again for the opportunity to be considered for this destination position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Kinder, we just want to express our appreciation for your interest in the superintendent position at Brighton Area Schools, certainly for being here tonight. As you know, we're in the process this week of interviewing 6 total candidates. And then we plan on conducting the second round of interviews the beginning of September, so September 1st, 2nd, that time frame. We do have intentions of narrowing the search down to the next phase at the end of this week. So on Friday evening is our current plan. And again, just thank you for being here, and again, your interest in Brighton Area Schools.
Thank you. I appreciate all of the work you do and my opportunity. Thank you to all of you.
All right, have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're halfway home.
Exactly. Good evening.
Take care. Okay, that will move us to call to the public for this evening. If anyone wishes to address the board this evening, please state your name, address, and we ask that you limit comments to 3 minutes.
Are we having folks identify themselves in the chat again tonight?
Yeah, please contact me directly in the chat, Nick Castillo, and I will select you and have you unmute yourself and you can talk.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Anybody like to speak? Anybody yet?
Okay, that'll close this evening's call to the public. Our next board meeting is tomorrow night. It's another special board meeting for superintendent interviews, as well as again on Wednesday night. Both of those meetings will begin at 6 p.m. And as mentioned, our plan is to determine finalists, final candidates on Friday, August 21st at 5 p.m. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, August 24th at 7 p.m. We will see everybody tomorrow night. Meeting adjourned.